call it, sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful to COVID itself, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but the moment COVID came along, and the government did something that it hadn't done for 50 or 60 years minimum, and started leading. Whether you call it leading by fear, whether you call it leading by
No, you see, this is the thing. They're not.
But no, hang on. People haven't had these what I call direct instructions or orders ever in 2 or 3 generations. So whether you loosely call that leadership is another thing. But what is perceived by the public is, oh my God, we're finally being told what to do. Oh, there's a good reason for it. Right, I will comply.
Yes.
Because this is, and hence the fear, because it was so out of the norm. We haven't had leadership for so long.
Let's catch up with that. So what's happened gradually since the Second World War is the command and control has eroded because of course this is a democracy.
And materialism has an effect as well.
And with the increased success of society comes materialism, and unregulated capitalism leads to materialism, leads to disintegration of structure, because people become very inward looking, and therefore religion, morals, ethics go out of the window into pure self-serving selfishness.
And for me, there's part of it is illusional wealth, because Margaret Thatcher was an example. She made the average person in the street feel wealthy. All that was equity while everything was riding high.
That's it.
Because you never had that 50,000 in the bank, but your house was worth 50,000 more. So you felt good.
You had security. So your fear was low. But the thing to understand is that remember what led to us in the first place reaching here? Religion. Religion is the most powerful way of leading. Reason is not only because most of it is good for you and it works, but because the boss is someone you cannot relate to, you cannot judge, you cannot argue with, you don't elect. The boss is immutable
and never out of fashion.
And the beauty also is that the prize is in the next life. So there's no stress of instant gratification.
Can I ask a question? Well, why is it in these last 17 months with these new restrictions because of COVID have, in my opinion, via the media, of course, not heard that much from the religious communities or entities, whether it be the Catholic religion, the Protestant religion, Church of England? Why have we hardly heard anything really of any sizable, apart from a sentence or two?
But exactly that. You see, the authority and the influence of religion has been eroded, some say beyond repair. And give you an example, in Greece, which is the Greeks have religion in their blood. They have the Greek Orthodox religion. 40 years ago, on television, the news, you would see politicians speaking, you would see the opinions of bishops, archbishops being sought. That doesn't happen now. I mean, it can potentially happen, but it's very, very, very rare.
Now you have scientific experts.
Well, thank you, because this is the next thing. Since the Second World War, because we are in democracies, and democracies are about getting elected, then basically therefore, whenever there's a vested interest, you're going to get trouble. And if you have to get elected, your vested interest is to be elected. And therefore, you're not going to get objective good leadership for the community. Just like the media, their vested interest is to make money, not to objectively report the news. So you're going to get trouble. And that's why free speech is nonsense in terms of where the media are concerned.
So if you want to go back to your point of the disintegration of society,
that's right.
you want to get back on that.
So therefore, the religion has been irreparably eroded, and even Nietzsche, philosophers some of them are exceptionally clever people, but they lack the actual real insight as to what's good for people. So, for instance, there's plenty of philosophers, Nietzsche, Peter Hitchens, who said proved even that God doesn't exist, or as Nietzsche said, God is dead. But he then went on to say, at least he had the insight to say, but you have to replace it with something. And why not, because man is so clever, develop their own morals, their own moral framework? The answer is, man is not clever. Man is very, very stupid, as many philosophers and psychologists have discovered.
Then can I make an observation that is actually a question? If religion is not as core or as powerful as it once was, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue that this current pandemic that we're going through would have pushed people towards religion, or religion would have used that as a viable excuse to say, come to us, we're here for you, we're here to support you, we'll show you the way. That hasn't happened. Hang on, our politicians are definitely not leading. They are, I mean, double standards is the least of our concerns. I mean, people, you've got a health secretary that doesn't even know that there are cameras in his office, for goodness sake. I mean, completely in their own little bubble, in their own little world. So that's not happening. At the same time, I would argue, especially in London, maybe less outside London, in the UK, that the sense of community is not what it once was. So, you know, the old argument of, I don't even know who's next to me. I don't even speak to my neighbour one door down. When actually, most of London is actually built up and set up as terrace houses where you are literally next to somebody and you hardly speak to them. So I'm not saying doom and gloom. I'm not saying it's all bad. But if you take those three elements, where are we now then?
Because the other thing, by the way, is religion was scuppered because people were not allowed to go to church.
But my question is, we seek leadership, a human race. You know, what species we are, whether we're rats, whether we're.
But that's the danger. You see, you've got to be very, very careful where you seek leadership from.
No, I'm talking basic leadership. I'm talking from a country level.
Who's seen The Life of Brian? Okay, now.
You mentioned this in the last podcast, so
I did, and that was wokeness. But now let's look at leadership, and essentially what he's running away, and they see a slipper, and someone lifts his slipper, and goes, "I found his shoe, our Lord's shoe." You know, basically, people are hardwired to seek leadership, and in the absence of that, then they look for surrogates, which include role models, which include Kim Kardashian. I mean, come on.
So hang on. So my question is still the same. You're starting to answer it now, thank God. But we're getting there. My question was, if
microaggression, which is
dear,
more nonsense.
I need another coffee. But the point is, if religion is not filling that void, politicians are definitely not filling that void. We don't have a close sense of community that we had maybe 40, 50 years ago.
Marcus Rashford.
So I was going to say somebody who couldn't score the penalty, but
no. But the danger, you see, I mean, he's jolly nice, but he has not been groomed and taught how to lead, has he?
What does that say to you when a well-known Manchester United football player is filling the void of the basic necessity and
dire
need
straits.
Of the education system of the United
dire
Kingdom?
straits.
He's saying, no, I mean, break this down to a really simple level. I'm simple. It's a simple level. There are poor kids who are the foundation and the future of our society. They can hardly afford to eat. Yet what we'll do, this was a few months ago, we'll take away the
school meal,
the current funding for school meals because we just will. There was no thought behind it, empathy, understanding at all.
Now, let's talk about children for just...
That's back to leadership.
Yes, it is. So one split second, we'll go straight back to leadership. But kids, now, what you're giving, or what's suggested, and the sounds are getting more and more, is untested vaccines on children. Now, we know that the risk of a vaccine is 1 in 300,000, and the risk of corona to a healthy child is less than 1 in 500,000. We know that kids hardly get corona. They therefore can't pass it around because asymptomatic transmission is nonsense, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, so let's keep it on track. So why?
But this is important.
Why?
This is very, very important. The longevity, how long someone lives, has been shown to depend on two main factors. The money you earn and your level of education. Now, money you earn. and it's if you're poor, you don't live very long. But also education. You see, if you're highly educated but poor, you're protected. If you're poorly educated but poor, you are very, very high risk.
Sorry, how are the government selling? What is the argument that you're giving to parents as to why you should vaccinate your children? Because I've spoken to quite a few parents in different countries, and they've said, I do not want, and they don't have that much information or data, but it just morally, instinctively, they've said, I don't think it's right to give a vaccine to a kid that's growing, is still not reached his potential in terms of his body growth and evolution. Why should I do that and disrupt the innocent and raw immune system of a child?
Because of herd immunity, they're saying when you're not going to get herd immunity without vaccinating children.
What's the argument? Because I haven't heard the argument.
That is the argument.
Really?
Yep. Because, well, look, it's spreading. It's a disaster. 290,000 at the end of last week. We must vaccinate children.
Are you again suggesting that the government are using certain figures out of context to make their own argument?
They don't know enough. You see, let's go back. You see, it's exceptionally important to understand the danger that we're in. Okay. It's not that you see, if there was a plan, if the government were lying on purpose, it would mean there was a higher purpose. Okay, there isn't. Now
that would nearly be acceptable.
They shut
strangely
schools. Okay, and the two things, your money you earn and your education. And we know that tens of thousands of kids haven't even returned to education. You're destroying the education of our children. Now, the other thing is that for the economy recession, because now there's a recession, to hit 500,000 deaths, we need a drop of 5.3% in our GDP. We now have a 9% drop, ladies and gentlemen. Think about that for a second. You have a cataclysmic catastrophe. Now, so what's going on in terms of leadership? The government has become decentralized from command and control. They've been slowly pushing leadership away from government so that the only role of government is slowly become to write policies. Think about that. Therefore, right now, the entire coronavirus drive is coming from unelected public health officials. Now, the trouble with that is that they all have an agenda. You can have a virologist who's simply tasked with the instruction to wipe out a virus, to protect the community from the virus. Now, the fact is, you can't. Okay? It's not possible. So you can talk as long as you want about how difficult it is and therefore how much you're going to have to restrict people, but it's useless. Now, the other thing is that the virus isn't that lethal anyway, as we all know. And the other thing is that the measures are much worse. So all the SAGE committee and everything like that involves a very, very focused group of specialists who do not have the knowledge or the understanding or insight to know the larger effects, and neither do they care because they are tasked in completing one specific job.
Right, I'm going to disagree with one of the first bits you were talking about the government decentralizing the way they lead and so on. I don't agree with that. I think that's what they would like to do. But what they are trying to do is something they're not geared up for. They are trying to micromanage a nation. Understand that concept. They're trying to micromanage 60-odd million people.
No, they're unelected public health officials are. The government are simply abrogating responsibility.
No, they're not. They're using the public health experts as their shield, as their reason for doing. But actually, it is the government that are deciding, are upon all these restrictions, what we should do, how we should do it, when we should do it, what you should wear on your face, what you should do in terms of public transport. We are being told, until recently, every step, every journey from